Hey there, this is Natalie, and it's time for more Reddit stories that will shock and amaze you. Possibly. We'll see what we've got in this video. Please consider subscribing because it really helps me out, and leaving a little like if you enjoy what you hear. Now, let's go. Now here's a story with an interesting title which was posted to r/relationships. I'm reading it live, so I don't yet know what the answer to the mystery is going to be. It was posted by user Top Sunday Girl, and the title is, Dad came to my apartment with toys for 2 young kids. I do not have any kids. TLDR, I, 25 female, do not have kids and have never been married. My dad, 49 male, came to my apartment with gifts for 2 very young kids and just exploded when I tried to ask what he was talking about. Long-time lurker, first-time posting. I'm coming to you, the brains of Reddit, that always find some angle I never considered. Because my dad did something so wild yesterday, and I'm spinning myself in circles about it. I'm trying to settle on an answer, but nothing really adds up. I'll break it down as thoroughly as I can, but my family has enough drama that it could fill 10 novels, so I'll be very to the point about it. So I will reiterate again that I do not have any kids and I'm not married. I've never been married, never even moved in with a man. Here are the people I can think of that might be involved in this somehow. I have one brother, 27 male, and one sister, 22 female. Brother is in a long-term relationship with a nice woman, but they're both not interested in kids right now. Sister still lives at our mum's house. No kids, no long-term partner. My parents are divorced and my mom remarried. My dad stayed single. He lives with my uncle, 40s male, and uncle's wife, 40s female. Stepdad is fine. They got married after I was out of the house. Sister reports that they're normal and beige together. He has no kids and has never met my dad anyways, so his family can be removed from the equation. Here's what happened. I have a shitty low-rent apartment about 45 minutes away from my dad's house. It's on the 3rd floor, and you have to walk into the apartment building and up flights of stairs to reach my door. Yesterday, around 6 PM, my dad knocks on my apartment door. I wasn't expecting him, so when I answered, I was confused but pleasantly surprised. I greeted him normally, and he gave me a side hug because he had a few toy boxes in his hands, like Fisher-Price toys for really young kids, even babies. I didn't say anything about them because I had no reason to assume they were for me. Like, I just didn't even register them in my brain. He looked totally normal. He wasn't breathing weird, wasn't sweaty, his pupils weren't huge, nothing was off with him visually. When we hugged, I didn't smell anything weird, no alcohol or smoke or anything, but my face wasn't too close to him. I said I was happy he dropped by, but why is he here? He said he was in the area shopping when he saw these toys, which he then held up for me proudly, and wanted to give them to the girls. I said, who? And he gave me 2 names I didn't recognise. I remember my brain sorting through the Rolodex of everyone I've ever met in our family, Terminator style, and nobody matched. As I'm standing there trying to match the names to any kids I knew of, he peeks over my shoulder into the apartment and asks if the kids are here or if they're with Mike. Again, who is that? Apparently, it's my husband. I must have been radiating confusion since now my dad is looking just as confused as I am, but still keeping up a good mood kind of vibe. I tell him I'm not married and have no kids. At first, he insisted I did, and when I reiterated that, he just kind of shook his head. At this point, I'm getting really concerned. Is my dad lost? Confused? Is he having some kind of breakdown? I ask my dad if he knows where he is. He starts to get frustrated really quickly and confirms that yes, he knows where he is and who I am. I start to ask him questions that I've seen in the movies, like, do you know what time it is or the year? And he just gets more and more angry. He starts shouting at me right in my face, yelling, "You think this is funny? And are you trying to make me look stupid?" There's bubbles of spit in the corners of his mouth. He went from 0 to 100 so fast, it genuinely kind of scared me, and I just retreated a bit into my apartment. When I backed away, he took it as a personal offence and started screaming, "Oh, now you're scared? You're scared of me? I guess I'll just F off then." He storms off, literally stomping his feet like a child down the hallway. I thought about chasing him, but he was so irate that I don't think it was a smart move. The whole interaction was less than 5 minutes. I closed and locked my door immediately and started making phone calls. I called my mom, uncle and siblings. Nobody has any idea about what just happened. I did ask my mom and sister if I was the crazy one and did have children I just forgot about, and they confirmed I certainly didn't. Uncle says that Dad left the house around 4 p.m. to run errands in my area, so that part was true. I told him what happened, and he said he'd try to figure out what's going on and would call with updates. It's tomorrow morning, and I haven't heard anything back. I spent all night trying to figure this out. Here are my theories. He has another kid somewhere that none of us know about, and that kid is married with 2 kids. But if that's true, why my apartment? Did he confuse me with his other hidden kid? He confirmed he knew where he was, so I'm not sure. Did he drive here on autopilot? He'd have to get out of his car and walk all the way here though, which should have been enough time to snap out of it. The anger might have come from him realising what he'd done and panicking, but it would have been so easy to make up a lie about what happened. He had some kind of mental breakdown. This was my first thought, but he looked and acted so normal. He drove out here and went to a store and purchased items without issue, so he must have been in decently sound mind to do that. Maybe he was somewhere else in his mind. I considered the idea that he was maybe in the past and thought I was someone else. But again, he confirmed where he was and who I was, and I didn't recognise any of the names as anyone in our family. He did this on purpose for some reason. I have no idea why he would do this. Drama? Our whole family loves to stir the pot, but this is extreme and makes him look bad, which is out of character. If he were to manufacture drama, he'd want to make himself look good, so this would be a dramatic switch in his dramatics. Maybe sympathy? Maybe he's going to play this up as some kind of stress breakdown. As far as I know, his job doesn't squeeze him too much. He's had the same position for years and was pretty happy with it. The most he complained about was having to work overtime every once in a while. He's developing dementia. I know early onset dementia could be the cause, but he's just barely 50. Yeah, he's getting older, but not that old, and he's never shown any signs of cognitive failure up until this exact point. This is a huge escalation from nothing. If anyone else has any idea what's happening here, please share. Uncle has yet to call me back and my siblings can't get through to my dad's phone. I think it's dead. I left a voicemail and text on my uncle's line, but who knows if he's seen them. I don't have any authority in his life. The only one that does is my brother, and he lives in another state, so it's not like he can help much. What the frick happened to my dad? And in the relevant comments on this one, the real Scrotus says, "Something is seriously wrong with your dad. Even if he does have a secret kid somewhere, confusing you for them like that is already a bad sign. Him somehow concocting a family you have and being that certain of it, along with the mercurial mood, is really a bad sign. I won't speculate as to what is wrong, but your dad needs to see a doctor yesterday." OP replies, "Agreed, but I really don't know how to make him go. I don't have any medical authority over him, and I think calling the police would be a bad move that would destroy any trust he has in me. Like having him dragged to a hospital after a mental breakdown has to be bad for his mental state, right?" And she also added a bit more in response to another comment. "This is also a large reason I haven't called yet," meaning the police. "We're not white, and with how angry my dad got, I'm worried he'll end up in a jail cell and not a hospital bed, or worse, he'll just be shot. But if my uncle doesn't get back to me by tonight, I think this is my only option." Pug Grumbles says, "I think it would be a good idea to talk to your uncle and see if there have been other instances in which your dad has had a spell like this. He and his wife will be the first to notice if he's been different. I worry that your last bullet point is the correct one, and it's so sad. He's young for that, but this incident would be a prime example of possible decline." And OP replies, "I called my uncle right after it happened, and I did ask if anything like this has happened before, and he said no. Every time I've tried to call him since, he's just rang until it reached voicemail, and a couple of times it seemed like he ignored my call. After work, I'm going to break his door down, because not only is my dad possibly dying, but my uncle is just silent about it now too. Now, this was already a pretty concerning story. There can be all kinds of reasons why someone can have strange delusions and stuff. I guess the most common one to leap to when it's older members of your family would be early onset dementia, but he is pretty young even for that. Though, of course, there are other things that can cause neurological problems. Could be anything ranging from concussion, or something like a fever or the onset of a migraine, through to something like a brain tumour. You'd think if it was drugs or something, or a breakdown due to severe stress, there would have been some other signs or some signs leading up to something like this. But if everything about him seemed normal, except for the things he believed to be true and the way his mood changed so quickly when questioned about it, it does seem like a neurological thing is the most likely. And I think it's interesting that the OP even checked with her own mom and sister that she herself wasn't having some kind of episode like that, by confirming that she indeed is not married with 2 children. The thing that does concern me more though is in those replies to the comments, like, does the uncle know something that he's keeping a secret here? It could be something, explainable, like he has already noticed some signs of decline in the father that maybe would lean towards something like early onset dementia. Or is he doing something strange, like injuring him or drugging him? I know that seems like a really weird conclusion to leap to, but the fact he just said he didn't know anything and then after that went completely, impossible to contact for OP is just a bit weird and suspicious. And given the father does live with the uncle and his wife, if anything untoward is happening to him, then they would be the first people you'd expect to either know about it or perhaps be responsible for it. Still, there is an update, so we will get to find out what the truth is. This was posted 2 days later, and OP says, TLDR, located my dad. I'm with him at the hospital. He has serious brain damage from a fall. I don't think he fell, but what do I know? And it continues. Hi everyone, I wanted to wait until I had more information to post an update, but a lot of people were seriously worried about my dad and I, so I wanted to let everyone know what happened. I finally found my dad. My uncle took him to the hospital the night of the incident and was, for reasons I'll get into, ignoring our calls and texts. Anyone who bet on head injury and drugs, you're correct. You can cash out your chips at the front counter. There was no second family. I wish there was. My dad would just be in drama-related trouble and not medical trouble. He's got a massive concussion and serious brain damage. Doctors don't know how he managed to even drive to my apartment safely. They think he was on autopilot, since he takes the freeway nearly every day. The phantom kids are his co-workers. His brain somehow blended the details of his co-worker's life into his own. Co-worker has a daughter who's married and has 2 kids, and the memories of being told about the girls mashed together with memories of his own daughter. Doctor says this is pretty common with head injuries. My uncle did find my dad and take him to the hospital. He did drive out to my area and scour the place looking for my dad, and eventually found his car outside Walmart around 10 PM. Couldn't find him outside, but did find him out behind the building, harassing an employee for a cigarette. He grabbed my dad and kind of dragged him into the car and took him to the hospital. He just decided not to update anyone because he didn't want to stress us out. I don't believe him at all. I think my uncle is responsible for what happened to my dad and was avoiding us out of guilt. After I posted here, I went to work, and once I was clocked out, I went to my dad/uncle's place. Dad and uncle's cars were gone, only my aunt was there. I went and knocked, but nobody answered. People in my last post mentioned carbon monoxide poisoning, and I was kind of freaking out, thinking that my aunt was just freaking dead inside, so I went around the house testing the doors and windows to see if I could get in. The back door was unlocked, so I just let myself inside and looked around. Totally empty. I even checked underneath the beds, since a couple people mentioned my dad could be paranoid or scared and hiding. My aunt had this giant purse, and it wasn't there, which confirmed to me that she was probably with my uncle. I just went back and sat in my car and started calling any hospitals and jails that came up on Google Maps. Nobody had any answers and just said he wasn't there. I even called the cops for a wellness check just to see if maybe they could call around the hospitals and get a different answer, but I waited until 11 p.m-ish and literally nobody came. No police, no family, nobody. I drive back home and try to get some sleep. Next day I call out of work and spend the day driving around my area trying to find my dad. Couldn't track him down, so I started calling hospitals again. There's 3 in my area, and while 2 of them gave me, "No, he's not here, sorry," one of them got really nervous over the phone and said, "I'm not supposed to give out patient information." I got suspicious, kept asking, and she just got more and more flustered. Hung up and drove my ass over there and saw my uncle's car in the parking lot. It was kind of late. The sun was down, but I wasn't keeping track of time, so there were only like 5 cars in the visitor area, and his was one of them. I do not have words to describe what I was feeling, but it was mostly just rage. Like, what the frick? Hello? He's been here the whole time? I went in and tried to get the receptionist to let me see my dad. She didn't really want to let me in, and I'm not proud of it, but I started freaking out. I slammed my hands on the desk, screamed, knocked over a magazine rack. I guess my tantrum made someone go talk to my uncle and aunt, since she came out to the waiting room and told the receptionist it was fine to let me through. If she didn't look so tired and sad, I was going to maul her, but the look on her face made me calm down, if you can call it that. Long story short, she took me to my dad's room. He looked terrible. None of you know my dad, but he's a beast. He's 5'11" with massive smile lines and bright shining eyes. He's my dad, so I'm biased, but he's always so full of life. Laying in that hospital bed, he looked dead already. Sunken eyes, lifeless and droopy face. He looked empty. I was able to talk to him for a bit, but he was totally out of it. He had to be reminded who I was several times, and just kept forgetting where he was and why he was there. Just like my dad, when I get upset, I get angry. I practically dragged my uncle out of the room and into the hallway for an explanation. After like 20 minutes of him making excuses and beating around the bush, another reason I think he's guilty, he told me what happened. Apparently, Monday morning, my dad fell getting out of his car and cracked his head really hard against the driveway. He got up and everyone thought he was fine, so they just went inside the house as normal. After a while, he had a headache, so they gave him a couple of prescription painkillers to ease the pain. Apparently that worked, so they just let him continue his day as normal. They only got concerned when I called and told my uncle what happened. He kept being so weird and evasive that I know there's more, but I couldn't wring his stupid effing neck in the hospital hallway, so I just let it go. Here's what I think happened. I know my uncle and dad, and I know the history of this stupid family like the back of my hand. I think my dad and uncle got into a fight over something, and dad was either pushed down or hit in the head by my uncle. The altercation gets resolved somehow, and they go back to normal, but my dad's head still hurts. I learned at the hospital from the doctor that there were enough painkillers in his body to numb a horse, so I suspect my aunt and uncle just kept feeding him painkillers so they wouldn't have to take my dad to the hospital and admit what they did. I pressed my aunt about the painkillers, and she eventually halfway admitted that they weren't exactly allowed to have them at all. I suspect she bought them off someone else. They're likely addicted, and I just didn't know. I'm almost 100% sure this is their fault. If they'd taken my dad to the hospital as soon as he hit his head, he would probably be okay. I'm staying at the hospital now, and my aunt and uncle have left. Doctor says to not get my hopes up about my dad, but when doctors say that, it always means he'll actually be okay, right? That's how it always goes. They tell you that your family member probably won't make it, but they always prove them wrong. I'm sorry, but the rest of this is just going to be venting. You know what really gets me? I could handle all this. I could understand it. My aunt and uncle have always been less than reliable. I can believe this could come from them. The hardest part is the lack of concern from literally anyone but me. I had to blackmail my brother, drama from a year ago, to even get him to agree to fly out. My mom doesn't care. Dad's family don't care. My sister kind of cares, but she doesn't really want to help, or even come support me in the hospital with him. I'm just so shocked that I'm the only MFer here for my dad, and he doesn't even know who I am right now. I have to take time off work, but it's not like my job gives me paid time off. I'm screwed. My dad is screwed. My life is screwed. Why am I the only one dealing with this? My brother is the only one of us with time and money to help fix this, and I had to threaten him just to get him to come back home. I wish I'd chased my dad when he left my apartment. I was afraid of him, but I'm even more afraid now. My dad is probably going to die, and I trusted the jackass who killed him with helping him. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with everyone? Why doesn't anyone give a crap about my dad? Why doesn't anyone give a crap about me? I could have been a better daughter to him. I could have visited more, called more, involved him in things more. I would have chased him when he left my apartment. I might have gotten hurt, but I would rather be beaten to a pulp rather than be sitting in a hospital room with my unconscious and probably dying father. I'm so freaking stupid. I'm sorry, Dad. And in the comments, KittyCat33070 says, "Yo, definitely get the police involved. Even if the story is true, that he fell, they still pumped him up with pain meds when he couldn't advocate for himself. It's like being roofied at a bar. I hope your dad pulls through. I would cut contact with your aunt and uncle. As a daughter, you have more rights to your dad's care than they do. Ban them from the hospital." OP replies, "On this, a couple of cops just came to talk to me and get a statement. They seemed to be taking me seriously and took my contact info. I told them everything about what happened when Dad came to my apartment and what my uncle said, and how I didn't believe him, and gave my version of things. Tried to give as much context as I could. I think they believed me, but who knows? They said they'd come around again soon. I'm not really sure what happens from here, but I'll be pressing for more information when they come back." Ruby Moon 286 says, "I'm so sorry, OP. I saw your post the other day, and this update breaks my heart. Please try and give yourself some kindness and grace. This isn't your fault. Following someone showing the level of agitation and aggression your dad was in the first post could have been extremely dangerous, and even potentially life-threatening to you. It might be worth filing a police report regarding the prescription drugs that your father was given, to see if you can get some sort of investigation going on, since your aunt and uncle could be at fault for his current state, even if it truly was a fall. Take care." OP replies, "Thank you. I'm really trying to remind myself I did everything I could, but it feels like I could have done more. It always feels like that though, no matter what you do. It feels like it's not good enough in the face of something like this. I talked to the social worker here, and they didn't seem like they were listening, but I'll push harder when they come back around again." Crazy Kitty 123 said, "Did the doctor give you any medical terminology for your dad's condition?" She replies, "Kind of. I told him to dumb it down for me since I have no medical knowledge at all. I'm a line cook at Denny's, for frick's sake, but he said massive concussion, brain damage, nerve damage, and cell death. He then said it's pretty bad, and I shouldn't get my hopes up for recovery. He looked like he was about to throw up telling me that, so I'm going to assume my dad probably won't last long." Yikes. Well, that is the only update we have on this story for now. It has been marked ongoing, so if there are any further updates, I'll let you know. Of course, it could be that by saying that, she shouldn't get her hopes up for a recovery, the doctor was meaning that he may have permanent brain damage, rather than that he was actually expecting that he, didn't have much longer left. It's often hard to kind of understand what you're being told in those kind of situations too. But this is a terrible story, and I really hope there is some kind of ongoing investigation into this, as well as hoping that the father gets better. Whatever actually caused the injury that gave him the brain damage and concussion, it's still very dodgy that the aunt and uncle are giving him what I assume were opioid-based painkillers that they shouldn't have had anyway. I know they do kind of hand them out like candy in America, which has led to a lot of people having addictions. But you'd think even if the aunt or uncle or both were dealing with an addiction themselves, they'd still know not to give a high dose of these painkillers to somebody else. That's just really fishy. I've only ever had prescription painkillers once, and that was when I broke my leg. And they still only gave me enough for 2 weeks because, they are so strongly addictive that they're reluctant to give them out at all. If I'd had any left over, I definitely wouldn't have just kept them around to give to a friend if they hit their head or something, you know. It's really something that I think they must have done something. They didn't want to take him to the hospital and hoped that the painkillers would just, you know, shut him up. I think that there's something really bad going on here, and I don't know, you guys let me know what you think in the comments, if you have any theories or if you've ever seen a situation like this before. This is one of the first ones I've read out on this channel that doesn't have a conclusion yet, but it's definitely an interesting situation worth talking about. Thank you so much for watching, or if you're on YouTube Music, listening in podcast form. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope to see you again soon for more stories.